So I was reading a book by Lin Buchanan called The Seventh Sense, and he talks about heaven and hell like they're real things, and he followed people into death, and, well, he followed their spirits after they died, and he said that they go to one of these things, oblivion, they reincarnate, or they go to heaven and hell. And he seems very intelligent and very capable of remote viewing, so it's rather concerning that he has brought these things up as real, because now I have considered their existence. Whereas before, I have not so much considered their existence, because they just sound like the most ridiculous things ever. I wanted to do this in a controlled way. Well, controlled by my standards. So I got out of body, and I said, take me to the time of my physical death. That's just like a suggestion I said aloud in my mind. And I wanted to find when I physically die and then follow my spirit to the appropriate spot, to wherever it goes, or see where it goes. And I ended up seeing some symbolic stuff. It didn't really make any sense to me. So what happened was I was a microorganism, and I was gravitationally bound to a clump of dust or a dust particle, and I had like 6 legs. I was very simple. There wasn't a lot of details in my physical form. And I was watching this in third person, but this was me, essentially, this life form. And I was suspended in space. There was nothing around in space, no stars or anything. And I just saw myself in the dust particle as the same color. I wasn't really perceiving colors because we were too small and there wasn't really any light around. I was just really astrally seeing it. And I was being gravitationally pulled towards something artificial, it seemed. And I looked towards where I was traveling, and I saw this nebula of some sort, except it was more spherical and more clean looking. It's more like a radial glow. And I eventually was pulled into this nebula, and inside this nebula was a spherical construct that was the source of what was pulling me in. It basically had the flower of life around it. It was a sphere with the flower of life shapes. The things that have the triangular-like points, those shapes, those were inset a bit. And I was pulled into one of those. So for every one of those little pockets that are within this spherical thing, there were other microorganisms like myself, exactly like myself, and they were pulled into their own little pockets. And this spherical thing, it was glowing magenta, and it was one of those things that felt like it was larger than life, like intimidatingly important and powerful. And whenever you come across these things and they're visualized as things that have a fixed size, it's almost always symbolic imagery, because something that has a fixed size and seems larger than life is obviously a distorted perception or some sort of encoded symbolic information. It doesn't actually look like that, but that's how I visualized it. And this is the first time I've seen the flower of life in an altered state. And I didn't really want to get close to it, so I didn't follow myself as a microorganism into this or close to this flower of life sphere, but I watched what it was doing. It's one of those things that if you have the courage to go inside or to get close to, you end up having this ridiculously long, intense experience where you learn a lot. I was a bit afraid of it, and I wanted to observe it from afar as well. Once it finished attracting my organism to it, my microorganism, it exploded with radiant magenta light. I don't really know what happened, and then I woke out of the experience. I could have been one of those tardigrades that can survive in space for like 10 days. And I wasn't around any stars, so I could have survived like forever, because I wasn't receiving radiation like those tardigrades that they sent in space. It felt like I was witnessing the last of life in the physical universe. It was far from what I wanted to observe. I think my subconscious took the suggestion a bit too literally, or something along those lines. I think the experience was about a perceived 20 to 30 seconds, but it felt like a very profound experience. And I'm going to do it again. This time I'm going to go inside the spherical thing that looks like the flower of life. And that's it. Thanks for listening. See you later.